This is a story about people who stand to lose everything. People who may need to flee their native home and never come back. These people are refugees, but they're not running from war or an oppressive government. They're seeking asylum from climate change.
My project is called Warm Waters, and it's about people living in the front line of the climate change.
That's Vlad Sokhin. His project aims to document the effects of climate change on nations bordering the Pacific Ocean. So far, Vlad has focused on some of the most affected, the island nations of Oceania.
I have seen villages completely destroyed by strong winds and huge storm surges. People have lost their lives and communities have been displaced from places where their families have lived for generations.
Tuvalu, the fourth smallest nation on Earth, is struggling to cope with the consequences of climate change. Located about halfway between Australia and Hawaii, Tuvalu's 9 low-lying islands cover just 26 square kilometers with a population of just under 11,000. Here, rising sea levels and increasingly violent storms have already decimated the Tuvaluans' way of life.
Due to the limited space, people use the airport runway to exercise, play games, and even sleep when it's too hot to stay in the house. Rising sea levels are shrinking this already tiny atoll, and during king tides, even the runway is subject to flooding. It is predicted by the climate change scientists that this country might become uninhabitable in the future.
Land loss isn't the only problem facing oceanic nations like Tuvalu. The rising sea levels are cutting off access to surface water. Right now, around 3 million people in the region are affected. And the overall situation is so dire that around a fifth of Tuvalu's population has already left to seek refuge on larger islands. These people may be the world's first climate change refugees, but Vlad predicts there will be many more.
From Pacific all the way to northern Alaska, many communities have already moved to new locations and others are preparing to relocate.
Relocating may be the only option for climate change refugees, but some have already found that adjusting to life in their adopted home could prove to be difficult.
The island nation of Kiribati, for example, is facing the threat of rising sea levels. The government bought some land in Fiji recently, where its residents will be relocated in the event sea levels rise to the point that it drowns this Pacific island nation. However, if they move to Fiji, Kiribati people will have no rights as the same as Fijian citizens. They won't be able to vote, they will always be seen as immigrants, and they are at high risk of losing their national identity.
It is easy to dismiss the consequences of rising sea levels, to believe that it's a problem limited to these small and distant island nations. But sea level projections show that in just under a century, 414 US cities will be facing the same problems as Tuvalu and Kiribati, to say nothing of the rest of the world.
Some climate scientists predict that by the end of the century, places like Miami, Amsterdam, Hamburg, or Lisbon could be affected by rising sea levels too. If this becomes a reality, it won't only impact these areas environmentally, but culturally and politically as well. The struggle for resources, land, food, and fresh water may cause local and global conflicts. It's clear that is the greatest issue that we will be facing soon.
Nuclear weapon testing is another issue causing global conflict and environmental damage. Click now to watch this video on the worst nuclear testing you've never heard of.
The story of Bikini Atoll is not a proud one for the US. Local residents there were shuffled inexpertly around nearby islands before the testing, and many were still exposed to dangerous levels of radiation.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.